The first thing Loretta Hayes packed wasn't jewelry. It was her mother's sewing scissors, heavy steel, black handles polished by 40 years of fingers. A tiny nick near the hinge where Evelyn Hayes once cut through a zipper she had no patience for. At 61, Loretta was sleeping in the back office of a laundromat that had not taken a quarter in 23 years, while her son told neighbors she had agreed it was time to simplify. They glanced at the sold sign in her old yard. Then they looked away. The laundromat sat beside the empty mill buildings where red dust still gathered in the window tracks. And old men could tell you which whistle used to blow at 3:40. 8 washers lined one wall. 3 worked if you kicked the third machine low by the coin slot and spoke to it kindly. Loretta spent that first evening wiping lint from counters that had gone gray under her hand. She found an old ironing board cover stiff with starch. Then another, then another. Inside the seams were repair tags in her mother's handwriting, hemmed uniforms, funeral dresses altered overnight, children's winter coats resized without a bill. By midnight, the laundromat no longer looked empty. It looked like a witness. Loretta had found proof of what one ordinary woman had carried for a whole town, and proof has a way of making comfortable people nervous. 3 weeks earlier, Loretta had stood barefoot in her own kitchen folding dish towels while strangers measured the dining room. The man from the moving company had red clay on his boots. The realtor wore a bright blue blazer despite the July heat. Someone kept opening and closing the front door, letting damp North Carolina air slide through the house where Loretta had lived for 37 years. She folded each towel into a neat rectangle. 1, 2, 3. Her mother, Evelyn Hayes, had taught her before she was tall enough to reach the counter. Smooth the corners first, Evelyn used to say. People deserve care even if it's only a clean towel. Brian stood near the sink scrolling through his phone. We talked about this, he said. Loretta looked up. When, you know what I mean, she did not. Not exactly. She understood pieces. There had been a hospital stay in February, after her blood pressure climbed so high that the nurse asked the reading twice. Brian had driven her to appointments. He had brought canned soup and a grocery store pound cake with the icing smeared against the plastic lid. He had paid 2 utility bills online when her hands shook too badly to type the password. Then came the papers. Just sign here, Mom. This lets me handle the house while you recover. You won't have to stand in line at the bank. Loretta had asked what the thick packet meant. Brian said it was permission to list the property if they decided together that the house had become too much. He said they would find her a small apartment near his family. Ground floor, no stairs. A narrow patio for tomatoes. He kissed her forehead after she signed. The same way he had before kindergarten. The same way he had before leaving for community college with 2 laundry baskets full of clothes she had labeled in black marker. She had confused familiarity with safety. The house was listed while she believed they were still discussing it. By the time she saw the first purchase agreement, the buyers had deposited earnest money and scheduled an inspection. The closing papers carried her signature too. She remembered signing at Brian's dining room table, while Melissa warmed leftovers, and their daughter practiced spelling words in the next room. Brian had turned pages and pointed. This one too, and here, initial that correction. Loretta had not known the papers included the final sale authorization. She had believed she was approving repairs and a temporary management account. The attorney she called afterward did not call it theft. Loretta had signed. The house still carried a mortgage. A second lien from a loan Brian had persuaded her to guarantee for his flooring business, and $12,000 in medical debt. After closing costs, the liens, and a 90-day escrow hold, there would be less than $30,000 left. Brian had planned for her to live with him. He had not planned to ask Melissa first. Now strangers measured the room where Loretta had iced birthday cakes with crooked lettering because she could never center names properly. Once she wrote "Happy Birthday Beat" on a cake meant for the girl next door. The birthday girl laughed so hard milk came through her nose. Brian had been 11. He ate 2 slices and asked whether the mistake meant he could have a second birthday that year. "Mom?" Brian's voice pulled her back. "You packed?" A cardboard box waited beside the refrigerator. Photo albums. A dented cookie tin filled with loose buttons. Her mother's scissors. Old receipts folded into quarters. 3 church bulletins she had forgotten to throw away. Brian rubbed the back of his neck. "You can stay with us." Loretta noticed he did not say for how long. Melissa had called the previous evening and used the phrase "until we figure something out" 4 times in 11 minutes. "I'm all right," Loretta said. "Mom, I'll manage." He stared at the white floor tiles. Hairline cracks ran from the pantry toward the sink. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this." The moving man asked where the china cabinet should go. Brian answered immediately. "Storage Unit 7. Loretta saw then that he had already rented the unit and chosen what would fit. She folded the final dish towel, smoothed the corners, and placed it in the box. Then she left. The Hayes family laundromat sat at the edge of Caldwell, North Carolina, where the business district gave up and the old textile blocks began. Population 14,000 on paper. Less in spirit. Morrow Mill had closed in 2009. Caldwell Weaving followed 2 years later. The brick buildings remained, their windows broken or painted over, faded letters, still promising steady work and family wages. To people who had stopped believing signs, the laundromat occupied a narrow storefront beside a vacant barber shop and a warehouse where pigeons nested in the loading dock. Peeling white paint curled from the trim. The rusted mailbox leaned toward the sidewalk. An open sign hung crooked in the front window. Its last working bulb burned out sometime during the second Obama administration. Loretta parked her 2004 Buick beneath a sycamore tree shedding bark onto cracked pavement. The key stuck twice. On the third turn, the lock gave with a dry metal cough. The smell met her first. Detergent, dust, steam trapped in old walls, the faint sourness of standing water. She flipped the switches. Half the fluorescent lights worked. The others flickered before surrendering. 8 washers lined the left wall. 6 dryers stood opposite them. Plastic chairs were bolted together in groups of 3. A vending machine contained expired peanut crackers, and 1 packet of cheese or curls faded almost white by the sun. Near the change machine sat a strawberry mug. 2 pennies and a bobby pin rested inside. Her mother's mug. Loretta picked it up, wiped the rim with her thumb, and set it down. The back office held a dented metal desk, a cot, 1 filing cabinet, and a chair that had clearly been brought from another room, decades earlier. The vinyl seat had split along the right edge. 1 leg was shorter than the others. Rain began tapping the front windows. Loretta sat at the desk and opened the cookie tin. Buttons spilled across the surface. White shirt buttons, blue coat buttons, mother-of-pearl circles that flashed pink when she turned them. Tiny baby buttons. A brass button stamped with the name of a hotel that had been demolished before Brian was born. Evelyn had never thrown away anything useful. Loretta smiled despite herself, then cried into her hands for exactly 4 minutes. At 4 minutes and 22 seconds, according to the clock above the desk, she stopped. Some losses blow in hard, rattling windows. Others wait in the basket until morning. Wash, dry, fold, repeat. She unpacked. The scissors went into the desk drawer. The photo albums onto the shelf. The folded receipts back into the cookie tin. Outside, thunder rolled across Caldwell. Inside, Loretta changed the sheet on the cot. The fitted corner snapped loose twice. She muttered something her mother would not have approved of, then laughed because even now, even here, nothing fit perfectly. She slept badly. A dryer door clicked in the dark whenever the wind pressed against the building. Water moved somewhere inside the pipes. At 2:17 in the morning, a freight train passed beyond the mills, the horn low enough to press against her ribs. By 6, she was awake. She cleaned because movement asked fewer questions than thinking. She swept lint from beneath the washers, wiped gray fingerprints from the detergent shelves, emptied trash bins holding receipts dated 6 years earlier. One customer had somehow bought $17.43 worth of soap from a machine that charged 75 cents a box. Loretta folded the receipt into quarters before she noticed what her hands were doing. By noon, sweat darkened the collar of her blouse. She opened the front and back windows. August air drifted through with cut grass, diesel exhaust, and the yeasty smell from the bread plant 3 blocks away. Near the pressing station, 3 ironing boards leaned against the wall. Their covers had gone yellow at the edges, stiff, glossy with old starch. The top board slipped when she lifted it. Something inside the cover made a dry paper crackle. Loretta set it across a folding table and pressed along the underside. The padding rose in a hard ridge beneath her fingers, too square to be stuffing, too deliberate to be rot. She fetched the sewing scissors, heavy steel, black handles worn smooth. The first stitch resisted, the second snapped. The seam opened with a tired little rasp, and a folded paper slid out onto the table. Cream-colored, edges soft from years of steam, one corner stained brown, probably from an iron that had spit rust water. June 12, 1987. Patricia Morgan. 2 school uniform hymns. No charge. Children start Monday. Pinned beside the note were 2 navy fabric swatches, cut so straight they looked measured with a ruler. Loretta sat down. The borrowed chair rocked under her. She opened another section of the cover. September 18, 1992. Funeral dress altered overnight. Mrs. Keller cannot afford replacement. Black ribbon already matches. No charge. Another pocket held 5 slips tied together with pink ink thread. January 7, 2001. 3 winter coats. Sleeves shortened, leave anonymously. May 3, 2008. Graduation gown repair. Student embarrassed. Charge pressing only. No charge. Loretta lowered herself fully into the chair. Her mother's handwriting covered every slip. Precise. Practical. The ink had smudged in places where damp fingers had touched it. Evelyn's voice on paper was nothing like the narrator in Loretta's head. No sweetness, no explanation. Just work done need noticed, bill forgiven. Dates, names, services. Sometimes one small note. Bad zipper, child nervous, wedding postponed by rain. Father recently unemployed. Loretta opened the second ironing board cover. Then the third. By sunset, slips covered the office desk, the fold table, and 2 plastic chairs. Her mother had not hidden money. She had hidden proof. One note made Loretta put both feet flat on the floor. November 17, 1994. Loretta recital blouse. Sleeve still too long. Finish after Keller coat. Below it, in smaller writing, missed recital. She said fine, she lied for me. Loretta held the slip in both hands. She had been 29 that year, singing in the church anniversary program because Evelyn had begged her to join. Loretta had looked for her mother through every song. The seat beside the aisle stayed empty. Evelyn arrived after the final prayer carrying Mrs. Keller's repaired coat and smelling of starch. You missed it, Loretta had said. Somebody needed me. I needed you. Evelyn had opened her mouth. Closed it. They did not speak for 9 days. Loretta had stored that night with all the other small disappointments daughters stopped bringing up because no one knows where to put them. Now, 41 years after the first alteration slip, and 32 after that recital, Evelyn's apology sat in Loretta's hands, stitched inside a cover no one was supposed to cut open. Evelyn had not been a saint. She had chosen wrong sometimes. Care had a cost. Someone always paid it. A knock struck the front door. Loretta startled. The scissors slipped from her lap and hit the concrete with a hard metallic crack. Outside, beneath gathering rain clouds, an elderly woman balanced a casserole dish against one hip. Gray braid, floral umbrella, reading glasses hanging from a chain. She peered through the glass, then smiled. You Evelyn Hayes' girl? Loretta opened the door. Yes. The woman's smile widened. Thought so, Dottie Rencholds. She lifted the casserole. You probably haven't eaten. Loretta steps aside. Dottie entered, shook rain from her umbrella, and looked toward the slips covering the back office. Mercy, she said. You found them. Loretta turned. You knew? Dottie placed the casserole on the counter. I knew your mama kept records. Never knew where. Records of what? Dottie picked up a slip, adjusted her glasses, and read. Her expression softened. of people who needed their hems fixed before life noticed they were struggling. The rain thickened against the windows. Loretta looked at the old laundromat, at the paper evidence spread across worn surfaces, and at the woman who had walked in as if the door had never truly closed. She had arrived believing she had inherited a place to sleep. She was beginning to understand that the building had been waiting for something else. Dottie's casserole was tuna noodle, too much celery, not enough salt. The noodles had gone soft around the edges. Loretta ate 2 helpings. "You're being polite," Dottie said. "It tastes fine." "It tastes terrible." Loretta smiled into her fork. The office smelled of detergent, baked onions, and damp paper while rain drummed against the windows. Dottie sorted through the slips with the care of someone handling old photographs. "Your mama did my wedding dress," she said. Loretta looked up. She did, 1984. Bought it from JCPenney 2 sizes too big because the smaller one cost more. Don't ask me why. Dottie found the slip 10 minutes later. June 2, 1984, Dorothy Reynolds. Wedding dress sleeves, waist, lace repair. Father recovering from stroke. Charge pressing only. Dottie read the final line twice. $5, she said. That's what she took. She smiled faintly. "I thought I looked like Princess Diana." "You probably did. Honey, I absolutely did not." They laughed. Then Dottie folded the slip along an old crease and held it against her palm. "Your mama stayed until nearly midnight. My father had his second stroke that week. I was thinking about canceling the wedding because flowers, cake, and a white dress seemed to belong to somebody else's life. Evelyn said the dark days did not get to own every square on the calendar." Loretta looked toward the recital note. "She missed things too," she said. Dottie followed her gaze. "Everybody does." Loretta handed her the slip. Dottie read it and sat very still. "You never told me." "I told her. Once. And then I became the kind of daughter who said it was fine." Dottie placed the slip beside the strawberry mug. "Maybe she became the kind of mother who knew it wasn't." Loretta did not answer. The next morning she unlocked the laundromat at 7:13. She did not yet have a business license posted. The coin boxes had not been opened in years. The water bill remained in Evelyn's name because no one at the utility office had noticed she was dead. Loretta put a handwritten sign on the door. 3 washers work. Dryzered. Quarters only. The first customer arrived at 7:40. A man in paint-splattered work pants paused halfway through the doorway. "I thought this place closed." "It did. You reopening?" "I think so." "You think so?" Loretta considered the question. "I'll let you know." He chuckled, loaded 2 washers, and asked her name twice before remembering it. By 10:30, 3 more customers had appeared. A grandmother washing blankets. A mechanic cleaning uniforms. A young mother with twin boys who ran circles around the folding tables until one slipped in a wet sock and cried more from surprise than pain. Loretta cleaned his knee with a paper towel. His mother apologized 6 times. "Children are allowed to be children," Loretta said. The woman stopped apologizing. Dottie returned carrying newspapers, a jar of homemade pickles, and a box of sticky notes. "Don't ask." "I wasn't going to. You were thinking about it." By noon, Dottie had organized the repair slips by year. 1984, 1985, 1986. Boxes borrowed from the dollar store, rubber bands, index cards. Dottie read aloud occasionally. Patch knees again. Growing faster than weeds. Another interview skirt. Husband left last month. Pressed twice. She stopped. "You remember Mrs. Temple? 5th grade teacher? Principal for 16 years. The slip was dated April 1996. Suit altered overnight. First interview after divorce finalized. Charge cleaning only. Loretta ran her finger over the smudged ink. People thought she pulled herself up. Dottie pushed her glasses higher. Maybe she did. Maybe somebody steadied the ladder. 3 days later, a woman entered wearing navy scrubs. Early 50s. Hair escaping from a ponytail. A hospital badge clipped upside down to her pocket. She held the local newspaper under one arm. A short article occupied the bottom corner. Local Laundromat reopens after years. Loretta looked toward Dottie. Dottie avoided eye contact. The woman introduced herself as Janice Bell. "I work nights at Mercy General," she said. "I heard what you found." "You knew my mother?" Janice laughed softly. "I was 19. She removed an old photograph from her purse. The corners had softened from years of handling. A younger Janice smiled into the camera in pale blue nursing scrubs. The pants were too long and pinned at the ankles. One pocket sat crooked. "Your mama altered every uniform I owned." Loretta searched the slips. Janice remembered the year but not the month. Dottie found the record beneath a stack marked 1991. Janice Bell, 3 scrub pants, 2 tops. LPN program starts August. Husband left. 2 children, no charge. Janice's eyes filled. "I almost declined the program. I had $48 until payday and both kids needed school shoes." She touched the photograph. 32 years later, I still work nights. I've delivered babies when the doctor didn't make it in time. I've held hands while people died. I've trained nurses who are supervisors now." She looked around the laundromat. "I don't know how many patients I've touched, but I know who helped me walk through those doors." Janice reached into her purse and placed an envelope on the counter. Loretta pushed it back. "No, yes, I can't take charity." "It isn't charity," Janice smiled. "It's maintenance." Inside the envelope was $400. "Your dryers sound awful. Fix one." Then she left before Loretta could return it. The bell jingled behind her. Loretta stood motionless. Dottie wiped beneath her glasses. "You all right?" Loretta nodded, then shook her head, then laughed through tears. "I don't know." Word traveled. Mountain towns had their versions. Mill towns had theirs. By the following week, people arrived carrying stories. Some brought photographs. Some brought clothing. Some brought memories that disagreed by a year or a name, or the color of a dress. A man named Curtis unfolded a child's winter coat. 1997. Dottie corrected him. 98. No, that ice storm was 97. The repair slip said January 1998. They argued for 10 minutes and both left unconvinced. A widow brought black gloves Evelyn had repaired before a funeral. A retired mechanic carried a First Communion shirt with the collar rebuilt from fabric cut inside the tail. A postal clerk presented a prom photograph. I thought everyone knew. They had not. Each person knew one kindness. No one knew the scale. Loretta listened, sorted slips, matched dates, and began a ledger in a composition notebook. She wrote names in blue ink. Dottie wrote in green and corrected Loretta's spelling even when Loretta was right. By the second week, the office wall held index cards, connected with lengths of thread. Children, teachers, nurses, cashiers, widows, factory workers, one woman who eventually became mayor, lives crossed and doubled back. The board looked ridiculous. It worked. The laundromat grew busier. Loretta used Janice's money to repair dryer 2. A technician named Malcolm charged $275 and took the rest in installments. He left 3 screws on the floor and insisted they were extras. "Machines don't have extra screws," Loretta said. "This one does now." Dryer 2 ran quietly for 4 days before developing a low rattle. Loretta called Malcolm. He did not answer. Late Thursday afternoon, a teenage girl entered wearing headphones and carrying a backpack repaired with silver duct tape. "Excuse me." Loretta looked up. "Can I help you? My guidance counselor sent me." The girl shifted awkwardly. "I need a dress altered." "For what?" "Scholarship banquet." Hers reddened. "I bought it at Goodwill." Loretta glanced toward the office, where evidence of another woman's work covered the walls. "What time is the banquet?" "Saturday." "Let's see it." The dress was dark green and one size too large through the shoulders. The hem dragged. The zipper caught halfway. The girl apologized twice. Loretta ignored both apologies. She had not altered formal clothes in years. Her hands remembered before her confidence did. Measure. Pin, turn fabric inward. Check both sides. "Not too short?" the girl asked. "Stand straight." "Sorry." Loretta looked at her in the mirror. "You're allowed to take up space." The girl stopped moving. Loretta recognized the words after she spoke them. Evelyn had said the same thing when Loretta slouched through a school fitting at 13. Saturday morning, the girl returned. The dress fit. She stared at herself in the long mirror beside the pressing station. Oh. She touched the waist. I look like I belong there. Loretta adjusted the shoulder seam. You always did. The girl cried only a little, then left holding the garment bag as if it contained a future too delicate to fold. Dottie pretended to study the receipt book. What did you charge? Loretta looked toward Evelyn's slips. Nothing yet. That isn't the same as nothing. Loretta did not answer. The thank you card arrived the following Monday. I got it, full tuition. The handwriting leaned downhill. The word tuition had been written twice because the first version was misspelled and scratched out. Loretta taped it beside the register. That afternoon, the city inspector arrived. He wore tan work pants, carried a tablet, and introduced himself as Raymond Sloan. Routine reactivation inspection. Loretta had not requested one. Dottie had. You need permits, Dottie said. I called. Loretta stared at her. You called the city? Better us than somebody with a stapler and a temper. Raymond walked the building slowly. He tested emergency lights that did not come on. Opened the electrical panel and frowned. Checked dryer vents. Measured the aisle between folding tables. Pressed a screwdriver against a soft patch in the wall near washer 6. His face remained neutral until he entered the utility room. When was this dryer line cleaned? Loretta looked at Dottie. Dottie looked at the ceiling. Before my mother died, Loretta said. That was when? 23 years ago. Raymond stopped typing. He found lint packed inside a vent elbow, a corroded shutoff valve, 2 outlets without ground fault protection, and a dryer cord whose insulation had cracked near the plug. He did not threaten. That made it worse. I can issue a temporary conditional permit, he said. 21 days. After that, the unsafe machines stay disconnected until repairs are complete. How much? I don't estimate. The electrician did. $3,800 for the panel work and outlets. Another $1,400 for vent cleaning and the shutoff valve. The roof leak near washer 6 had softened a ceiling joist. That repair would be separate. Loretta read the estimate twice. I don't have this. Dottie folded the paper in half. We have 21 days. We have a laundromat that barely pays water. We have people. Loretta looked through the office doorway at the cards, the fabric swatches, the names. People already gave once. That isn't how community works. Maybe it should be. The next morning, Loretta found 2 jars on the counter. One labeled repairs. The other labeled coffee, because Dottie said no one trusted a place that combined the two. By noon, the repair jar held $83, a Canadian quarter, and a button. A retired electrician named Frank Malloy arrived carrying a toolbox. I can do the outlets if Sloan signs off. A church deacon offered to clean the vent line. Malcolm returned, admitted the rattling dryer had needed 3 extra screws, and worked without charging. People showed up in work clothes after shifts. They swept, tightened, scraped, patched, and argued about methods. It was not enough, but it was movement. On the 19th day, Raymond returned. The outlets passed. The vent passed. The shutoff valve held pressure. The panel still required 2 breakers, and the roof joist remained exposed. 7 more days, he said quietly. That's the most I can give you. Loretta nodded. After he left, she sat on the cot and stared at the estimate. The conditional permit lay on the desk beside Evelyn's scissors. For the first time since opening, the laundromat sat before her less like an inheritance and more like a test she had not agreed to take. The following morning, Brian walked through the front door, carrying a paper cup of coffee and a leather folder. The coffee had gone lukewarm, too sweet. He had brought the caramel one she used to order after church. Dottie looked up from the folding counter. You should call before showing up. Brian blinked. Good morning to you too. It was. Loretta wiped her hands on a towel. Hi, sweetheart. He offered the coffee. She took it. You've been busy, he said. 3 machines were running. The scholarship card hung beside the register. A mechanic folded uniforms near the back. The repair jar sat half full. Brian stared at the wall of index cards and thread. What is all this? Dottie answered. Evidence. Of what? That your grandmother mattered. He looked uncomfortable. I never said she didn't. Dottie snorted. Loretta stepped between them with only a glance. What brings you here? Brian opened the leather folder. Inside were color renderings of downtown Caldwell, boutique storefronts, outdoor seating, decorative lights strung above sidewalks, young couples carrying shopping bags beneath trees that had not yet been planted. At the center of the map stood the Laundromat parcel and the empty mill blocks beside it. Riverside Revitalization Initiative. Loretta turned the page. Projected tax revenue, mixed-use development. Residential lofts, acquisition district. What is this? Brian cleared his throat. An opportunity. Dottie laughed once. For who? Brian ignored her. The city is working with private investors. Melissa's cousin is in planning. The area is going to change. How long have you known? He did not answer quickly enough. Loretta closed the folder. How long? Before the house closed. The room seemed to narrow. A washer entered the spin cycle and began knocking because someone had loaded a blanket on one side. You knew this property might be valuable. Might be. Nobody knew what council would approve. You knew. Mom, I thought you'd sell it anyway. It had been closed 23 years. And the house? Brian rubbed his forehead. The house was too much. The mortgage, the lien, the hospital bills. I was trying to solve everything by making decisions before I understood them. You signed. The words came out too quickly. Brian heard them at the same moment everyone else did. Mrs. Temple, waiting beside dryer 2, stopped folding. Dottie set down a towel. Loretta held the paper cup between both hands. The lid had a small crack near the drinking hole. Caramel syrup clung to the rim. I trusted you, she said. Brian's shoulders fell. Oh, no. You know now, he stared at the floor. The property could be worth $400,000 if the zoning passes. Dottie sat down hard. Loretta thought she had misheard him. What do they want? They'll make an offer. And what do you want? Brian looked toward the repair notice pinned beside the office door. I want you safe, comfortable, done struggling. You want me to sell. He did not deny it. Loretta placed the coffee on the counter. You should go, Mom. Not forever today. Brian closed the folder. At the door he turned. I really thought I was helping. Loretta looked at the same face she had washed after childhood fevers. The same mouth that used to call from college. Because he could not remember how long to boil an egg. People can hurt you while believing they're practical, she said. He left without answering. The bell above the door sounded once. The laundromat kept running. But the betrayal had changed shape. It was no longer only behind her. The first certified letter arrived 5 days later. Dottie signed for it because Loretta was elbow deep in the drain trap beneath washer 3. Apparently, I've become your receptionist. Loretta dried her hands and opened the envelope. Professional stationery, 3 pages of legal language. Caldwell River Partners formally expressed interest in acquiring the Laundromat property as part of a voluntary redevelopment assembly. An appraiser's card was clipped to the back. A meeting was requested within 10 business days. 2 days later, another envelope arrived from the city's redevelopment office. The Laundromat parcel had been included in a proposed acquisition district. The board would consider community impact, infrastructure needs, and whether exclusion of the property would materially affect the project. Dottie read that sentence aloud. That's a fancy way of saying they'll build around you or through you. Phone calls followed. A man named Gary introduced himself twice in one voicemail. A woman from Charlotte asked whether Loretta had counsel. One caller left 3 messages in a single afternoon and mispronounced Hayes every time. By Friday, Dottie unplugged the office phone. They can write letters like civilized people. The laundromat continued operating. Wash. Dry. Fold. The repair deadline remained taped beside the office door. The city inspector returned on the final day. Frank had found the correct breakers through a supply house in Winston-Salem. The joist had been sistered with new lumber, though rain still found its way around a roof seam 2 feet farther east. Raymond Sloan checked every repair. He tugged the vent collar, tested outlets, opened the panel, climbed a short ladder, and pressed the repaired joist with both hands. Conventional permit converts to 6 months, he said. You still need the roof membrane replaced before winter. Loretta let out a breath. How much time? Before the next inspection, 6 months. Before rain decides for you less. He signed the form, then lowered his voice. My mother used this place. Evelyn fixed my band uniform in 1982. I tore the sleeve climbing a fence. Dottie smiled. What were you doing climbing a fence in a band uniform? Raymond tucked the tablet beneath his arm. Inspection complete. He left without answering. The third week brought Michael Trent, Vice President of Community Development. He wore expensive shoes, though not flashy ones, and carried a portfolio with the same renderings Brian had shown her. Mrs. Hayes, Loretta. He glanced around the room before speaking. A child colored at the folding table. 2 dryers turned. The scholarship card hung by the register. Repair slips filled archival sleeves Dottie had ordered online and then denied ordering. This place means a great deal to people, Michael said. Dottie looked up. You've been here before? No. Then you're guessing. Michael accepted the correction without irritation. I understand the building has community history. History is dead, Dottie said. This place is busy. Loretta gave her a look. Michael opened his portfolio. He spoke of jobs, tax revenue, sidewalks, flood drainage, and the possibility of bringing a grocery market back to the east side. None of it sounded evil. Some of it sounded useful. Then he slid an offer across the counter. Loretta stared at the number. $385,000. Contingent on rezoning and clean title. The amount made her palms damp. With that money, she could buy a house smaller than the one she lost. Pay every debt. Put something aside for his daughter. Stop sleeping 6 feet from a boiler pipe. Michael folded his hands. No pressure. We simply don't want you blindsided. Loretta looked around the laundromat. Dryers turning. Children waiting. A mechanic reading an old magazine with the cover missing. What happens if I say no? Michael paused. The project becomes more complicated. Complicated how? The redevelopment board can recommend a parcel assembly plan. That could lead to further negotiations or alternate public action if council finds the project necessary. Dottie stood. You mean eminent domain? I mean there are processes. Sounds prettier when you say processes. Michael closed the portfolio. I am not threatening Mrs. Hayes. I'm informing her. Loretta studied him. Do you believe this building should be torn down? He looked toward the cards on the wall. I believe cities have to make choices with incomplete information. It was the first honest thing anyone from the project had said. Then get more information, Loretta replied. Michael nodded once. The public hearing is in 4 weeks. He left the offer on the counter. That night, rain returned. Water found the new roof seam and dripped beside washer 6. Loretta placed a bucket underneath. Drip, drip, drip. The offer lay beside the utility bills and Raymond's 6-month permit. The laundromat had made a small profit for the first time that week. $116 after water, gas, detergent, and the payment to Malcolm. At that rate, the roof would be paid for in 4 years. Loretta opened Evelyn's composition ledger, the one Dottie had found in the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. Most pages held measurements and supply lists. On the inside cover, Evelyn had written a sentence twice, years apart. Care isn't free. Somebody always pays. Decide gladly. The first version was in dark blue ink. The second, added later, shook slightly. Loretta read it until the words became irritating. Gladly, she said to the empty office. Easy for you. Then she thought of the recital. The empty chair beside the aisle. Her mother arriving after the final prayer with somebody else's coat across her arms. Care had not made Evelyn perfect. It had made her responsible for choosing who paid, and sometimes she had chosen Loretta. The memory did not disappear because of the hidden apology. It became more complicated, more human. Loretta picked up the pen beside Michael's offer. She imagined a small brick house with a level driveway, a bedroom that did not smell like bleach, a refrigerator holding food instead of thread spools. She imagined sleeping through rain without counting drips. She signed the first line of the acknowledgement page. Loretta Hayes. The ink looked darker than she expected. Her hand stopped. The paper did not commit her to selling. It only acknowledged receipt and opened formal negotiation. Brian would call it practical. Michael would call it progress. No one would call it surrender. That was what frightened her. The front door opened. Dottie entered, carrying 2 coffee cups and wearing bedroom slippers inside wet plastic grocery bags because she had forgotten her rain shoes. She saw the paper, then the pen. She did not say no. She set the coffee down and removed the bags from her feet. These slippers may never recover. Loretta almost laughed. Dottie sat in the uneven chair. You want me to tell you what to do? No, good. I was going to anyway. Loretta looked at her. Dottie picked up Evelyn's recital slip. Your mama hurt you. Loretta's jaw tightened. This isn't about that. Everything old gets invited when a new hurt arrives. The roof dripped into the bucket. She chose everybody, Loretta said. Sometimes before me, yes. The agreement in Dottie's voice made Loretta look up. You're supposed to defend her. Why? She was wrong. Dottie slid the slip across the desk. She was also sorry. Both can be true. Loretta rubbed her thumb across the signature she had started. I'm tired. Then be tired. I could sell and be done. You could. You aren't helping. I'm not your son. The words landed gently. Dottie continued. Brian decided what safety meant for you. Michael decided what progress meant for Caldwell. Evelyn sometimes decided whose need was greatest, without asking who would be hurt. Maybe the lesson isn't always choose service. Maybe the lesson is choose for yourself. Loretta looked toward the laundromat floor. A bucket under the leak. A repaired dryer rattling in the dark. Index cards on the office wall. A place that was useful and difficult in hers. She tore the acknowledgement page in half, then again. Dottie sipped her coffee. Mine's terrible. Loretta tried hers. Weak. Mine too. They drank it anyway. The next morning, Loretta called the redevelopment office. I am not accepting the offer. The clerk asked whether she wished to submit a formal community impact statement before the hearing. Loretta did not know what that meant. Dottie did not either. Mrs. Temple did. She arrived 15 minutes before opening carrying a long cardboard dress box, tied with faded pink ribbon. We're not open yet, Dottie said. I know. Mrs. Temple stepped inside anyway. At 73, she still stood with principal posture. Straight spine. Sensible shoes. The habit of pronouncing every syllable in a child's name when disappointed. She placed the box on the folding table. Loretta looked up from the call notes. Mrs. Temple. Mrs. Temple untied the ribbon. Inside lay a navy skirt suit wrapped in tissue paper. I wore this to my interview. The repair slip was already pinned on the wall. April 1996. Suit altered overnight. First interview after divorce finalized. Charge cleaning only. I almost didn't go, Mrs. Temple said. My husband emptied the checking account. My son needed braces. I had $42 left. She touched the sleeve. Your mother fixed this while I cried in that chair. She pointed toward the corner near dryer 3. Then she said, stand straight. Children borrow courage from teachers. The room went quiet. I became principal 6 months later. Mrs. Temple folded her hands. If the city asks what this place is worth, I'd like to answer. The second garment came that afternoon. Janice brought her pale blue nursing scrubs sealed inside a garment bag. Curtis arrived the next day with the winter coat. Mrs. Keller's daughter carried the black funeral gloves cause Mrs. Keller herself had died in 2011. The postal clerk brought the prom dress from her photograph. One side seam had been let out twice and taken in once. A retired mechanic delivered a First Communion shirt. A widower carried his wife's final church outfit in a cedar box. A woman named Teresa unfolded a waitress uniform. Interview outfit. Another brought a tiny kindergarten cardigan. My daughter wore this the first day she stopped crying at school. Dottie labeled boxes. Widdings funerals. Weederview's school. Winter. New beginnings. The office overflowed. Garments hung from temporary racks. Laundry baskets held photographs and letters. The smell of starch mixed with cedar chests, old perfume, and lavender sachets. One choir robe arrived packed with mothballs. Dottie sneezed 9 times. If the hearing doesn't kill us, this will. Loretta laughed, then cried, then laughed again. They began assembling the community impact statement. Mrs. Temple wrote the introduction. Janice listed professions and years of service. The scholarship student built a spreadsheet during her fall break and corrected Dottie's arithmetic without comment. They counted 347 repair slips from the ironing board covers, 62 additional entries from Evelyn's ledger, and 91 garments or photographs that could be matched to a record. Dottie wanted to include every story. Mrs. Temple said the board would stop listening after 10 minutes. They compromised at 12 speakers and a written appendix. Loretta practiced at the counter after closing. My name is Loretta Hayes and I own. She stopped. Again, this laundromat was established in. Too formal. Again, my mother helped. Her throat closed. Dottie sat with a timer. You have 3 minutes. I have 61 years. The board has 3 minutes. Loretta tried again. Brian called twice during that week. She did not answer the first call. On the second, he left a message. I heard you're fighting it. I want to help with the paperwork. No conditions. Call me if you'll let me. Loretta listened twice. She did not call. Not yet. The official hearing notice arrived on a Thursday, 7 p.m. at the Old County Administration Building. Agenda Item 6. Riverside Voluntary Acquisition District and Community Serving. Use exemption for 214 Morrow Street. The phrase community serving use exemption came from Mrs. Temple's research. The Redevelopment Authority's own guidelines allowed the board to recommend excluding a parcel if displacement of an active service would create a documented hardship not reasonably replaced within the project area. The laundromat did not need to be historic. It needed to be necessary. That's better, Dottie said. History sounds like a plaque. Necessary sounds harder to move. Michael Trent called the day before the hearing. We received your submission. All 87 pages? All 87. Dottie printed the photos too large. I noticed. A pause. Loretta, the project can accommodate some changes, but excluding your parcel affects access, drainage, and the pedestrian corridor. The board will ask whether sentiment outweighs the economic benefit. Loretta looked at the student spreadsheet. Nurses trained, teachers hired, jobs obtained, funerals attended with dignity, children sent to school in clothes that fit. It isn't sentiment, she said. Michael was quiet. Then show them. Thursday arrived humid with rain threatening over the mills. Dottie pressed Loretta's pale blue blouse twice. You've got wrinkles. So does everybody. Not tonight. Loretta touched her mother's scissors before leaving. Black handles. Steel worn smooth. She tucked the recital slip into one side of her purse and the first school uniform slip into the other. Care had cost both women something. Tonight, Loretta would decide what she was willing to pay. The hearing room smelled like floor cleaner and weak coffee. Metal folding chairs had been brought in from another room. 2 had different colored backs. The microphone squealed twice before a county employee wrapped tape around the cable and told everyone not to touch it. Michael Trent sat at the front beside 3 attorneys and a traffic consultant. Brian occupied the back row. Melissa sat beside him. Brian's daughter swung her legs beneath the chair, the heels of her shoes tapping the metal support. Loretta had not known they were coming. Residents filled the room gradually, then rapidly. Garment boxes stacked along one wall. Janice carried her scrubs over one arm. Mrs. Temple kept the navy suit buttoned inside its bag until the last possible moment, as if wrinkles still mattered. Board members exchanged glances. One leaned toward another and whispered, "Did we underestimate turnout?" Dottie heard him. "Yes," she said. The chairman called the meeting to order. Agenda items 1 through 5 took 47 minutes. A drainage contract, a zoning correction, a dispute over a loading zone. The girl fell asleep against Melissa's shoulder and woke when someone dropped a binder. Then the screen at the front displayed the Riverside renderings. Michael stood. He was prepared. He knew the project. He explained how the abandoned mills could become housing, retail space, and a public walkway connecting downtown to the river. He showed flood management maps and employment estimates. He did not mention luxury. He said mixed income twice. The traffic consultant described access through the laundromat parcel. An attorney explained that acquisition remained voluntary at this stage. At this stage. Loretta heard those words settle across the room. Michael concluded, "We recognize the property's current use and the community's attachment to it. Our position is that the broader project provides substantial long-term benefit." The chairman thanked him. A board member named Calvin Pierce leaned toward his microphone. He had silver hair and a red tie that sat slightly crooked. "I read the community submission," he said. "It is moving, but we are tasked with economics, infrastructure, and public benefit. We cannot make land use decisions based on nostalgia." A murmur moved through the room. Dottie whispered something that made Mrs. Temple grip her wrist. The prepared speech slid loose in Loretta's mind, page by page. The chairman called her name. She walked to the podium. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the pages Mrs. Temple had typed. The first sentence blurred. "My name is Loretta Hayes." The microphone carried her voice farther than she wanted. "I worked in school cafeterias for 36 years. I am not an economist. I don't know how to calculate what a sidewalk earns or what a building costs a city over time." She looked toward Calvin Pierce. "I also don't think nostalgia is enough." The room quieted. Loretta removed the first repair slip from her purse. "This is dated June 12, 1987. 2 school uniform hems, no charge. Children start Monday." She held it up, though no one could read the small handwriting from the board table. "My mother wrote 347 slips like this and hid them inside ironing board covers." We found another 62 entries in her ledger. Loretta glanced toward the garment boxes. She did not keep records because she expected a hearing. She kept them because she remembered people. Her mouth went dry. She looked down at the speech again, then folded it. "I reopened the laundromat because my son sold my house, after I signed papers I did not understand." Brian lowered his head. "That is not the city's problem. It is not this board's problem. But it is how I came to sleep in the back office of a place everybody thought was finished." She looked at the people behind her. "I found out it wasn't finished." Loretta stepped back. The chairman checked the clock. "Thank you, Mrs. Hayes. We have received a list of speakers, Mrs. Temple." Mrs. Temple carried the navy suit to the podium. She unzipped the bag. "Mr. Pierce said economics, so I brought mine." A few people laughed. Mrs. Temple did not. "In 1996, I had $42, one son who needed braces, and an interview for an assistant principal position. My husband had emptied our checking account during the divorce. This suit did not fit. Evelyn Hayes altered it overnight and charged me for cleaning only. She held the sleeve. I got the job. I later served 16 years as principal of Caldwell Elementary. During that time, I supervised approximately 200 employees and more than 6,000 students." She looked directly at the board. "You may decide whether $5 of alteration work had an economic return. I cannot calculate it for you." Mrs. Temple stepped away. Janice came next. She carried the pale blue scrubs. "These got me through nursing school." She described night shifts, births, deaths, and 32 years at Mercy General. She did not cry until she mentioned that both of her children had graduated high school because someone had made 3 uniforms fit for free. Curtis carried the winter coat. Teresa unfolded the waitress uniform. The postal clerk showed her prom photograph and admitted she had lied about the dress being new because she was 17 and kept one hand over the frayed side seam all night. A man named Harold Boone held up a gray interview jacket. "I wore this when the mill closed. Got hired driving county buses. 24 years. Pension." The widower opened the cedar box containing his wife's church outfit. "This isn't economic," he said, "but I wasn't sending her to the funeral home in a hospital gown." Silence followed him back to his seat. The scholarship student approached with the dark green dress. She had brought it on a padded hanger. "Mrs. Hayes altered this last month." Loretta looked up, surprised. The student had not been on the speaker list. "I won a full scholarship." I leave for school in January. She faced the board. Maybe I would have gone to the banquet in a dress that didn't fit. Maybe I would have stayed home. I don't know. That's the point. Small things decide whether people walk into rooms. Calvin Pierce stopped writing. The testimony continued. 12 planned speakers became 21. Then 30. The chairman asked how many people still intended to speak. Dottie stood and counted raised hands. 43. The chairman removed his glasses. We will hear 5 more and accept the remainder in writing. Dottie folded her arms. 7. The chairman looked at her. 6. Fine. People laughed, and the room breathed again. The final speaker was Raymond Sloan, the city inspector. He wore the same tan work pants and held no garment. I inspected the property last month. It had serious safety deficiencies. Mrs. Hayes corrected the immediate hazards within the deadline, with licensed oversight and volunteer labor. Calvin Pierce leaned forward. Are you recommending approval as an inspector? No, sir. I'm telling you the building is active, compliant under a 6-month permit, and repairable. Raymond paused. Also, Evelyn Hayes repaired my band uniform in 1982. I tore it climbing a fence. Dottie called from the audience. Why were you climbing a fence? Raymond looked toward the board. My report is complete. Even Calvin smiled. The chairman called a recess. People crowded the hallway. Coffee ran out. Someone brought a chair from a storage room for Mrs. Keller's daughter. Brian's daughter woke fully and wandered between garment bags until Melissa pulled her close. Michael Trent found Loretta beside the water fountain. The machine dispensed lukewarm water into a paper cup that collapsed slightly in her hand. I didn't know, he said. No. We reviewed the ledger. Your impact statement is stronger than most nonprofit applications I've seen. Loretta looked at him. Is that a compliment? It is an admission. He glanced toward the hearing room doors. Our investors want the parcel. Without it, we lose the straight access corridor and some parking. Then build a crooked sidewalk. Michael almost smiled. They will ask me to oppose the exemption. Will you? He took longer than she expected. This was his choice. Not between good and evil. Between the plan he had promised to deliver and information that made the plan incomplete. I will recommend redesign, he said. I cannot guarantee they will accept it. Why? Michael looked through the glass panel at the garment boxes. Because development that removes a working community service and calls the removal improvement is bad development. He returned to counsel before Loretta could answer. Brian stood 10 feet away. He had heard Mom. Loretta waited. I was wrong, yes. The word made him flinch, but she did not soften it. I thought money fixed things, he said. It fixes some things. I sold your house. Yes, I can't undo it. No. He crushed the paper cup in one hand. I don't know how to fix this. Loretta thought of the roof seam, the permit, the liens from his business loan, the years she had answered his emergencies before. He had learned to distinguish emergency from inconvenience. Start measuring differently, she said. The hearing resumed. Michael returned to the podium first. His attorneys whispered until he raised one hand. Caldwell River Partners is withdrawing its opposition to the community serving use exemption. We request 30 days to submit a revised site plan preserving 214 Morrow Street and maintaining service access. The room shifted. One attorney closed his eyes. Calvin Pierce asked about added cost. Michael gave a number. It was not small. And your investors agree? They have been informed. The wording told everyone the investors had not agreed yet. Michael sat down. The board deliberated publicly. Drainage, access, parking. Whether the laundromat services could be replicated in the new commercial plan. Mrs. Temple passed the chairman a map, showing that the nearest coin laundry was 4.7 miles away and unreachable by direct bus route. The student's spreadsheet documented current weekly use. Raymond confirmed the building could remain safely operational during surrounding construction, if protective measures were included. Calvin Pierce spoke last. I said earlier that nostalgia cannot govern economic decisions. I stand by that. Dottie's face tightened. But the record before us is not nostalgia. It is documented service, past and present. The question is not whether the building reminds people of something valuable. The question is whether it remains valuable now. He looked at Loretta. The evidence says it does. The vote was 4-1. The board recommended the community serving use exemption, suspended acquisition proceedings, and directed staff to negotiate construction protections, signage access, and a small facade grant through the redevelopment program. The chairman struck the gavel once. Applause rose before he could ask for order. Dottie cried openly. Mrs. Temple hugged Janice. Someone dropped the black funeral gloves beneath a chair. Brian's daughter pushed through the aisle and wrapped both arms around Loretta's waist. "Grandma, did you win?" Loretta looked at Michael gathering his papers, at Calvin speaking with the chairman, at the people carrying garments that had survived frayed cuffs, empty cupboards, hospital corridors, and bad seasons. "The laundromat stays," she said. That was enough. The rain began as they left the building. People ran toward cars with garment bags over their heads. Dottie stepped into a puddle deep enough to fill one shoe and blamed the redevelopment drainage plan personally. Brian stood under the awning with Melissa and the girl. "Can we talk tomorrow?" he asked. Loretta looked at him. "At 8. The laundromat? Where else?" He nodded. The following morning, Brian arrived at 7:52 wearing work jeans and an old company sweatshirt. He brought no coffee. A roofing contractor arrived behind him. Then an electrician. Loretta stood in the doorway. "What did you do?" Brian held out a folder. Not renderings this time. Receipts. A canceled check. A repayment agreement. He had sold his base boat and one of the 2 works owned by his flooring company. The money covered the roof membrane, the remaining electrical work, and $12,000 toward the second lien that had reduced Loretta's house proceeds. "It isn't everything," he said. "I used that loan. I told myself the business would pay it back before it mattered." Loretta read the numbers. "Melissa knows." She helped list the boat. Melissa, standing near the Buick, lifted one hand. Brian continued. "The rest comes monthly. It's written down. Not because you need to trust me, because you shouldn't have to." The last sentence was not polished. He stumbled over it and looked away before finishing. Loretta closed the folder. "You don't buy forgiveness. I know. You don't repair one roof and fix 37 years. I know." She looked at the contractors unloading materials. "The roof does need fixing." Brian nodded. He spent that day carrying old membrane from the roof, sweeping gravel, and making trips to the supply yard. He was not skilled at roofing. He tore one glove, dropped a pry bar, and called the contractor by the wrong name until lunch. Loretta did not praise him. She brought water. At 5:30, rain threatened. The crew sealed the final seam just before the first drops fell. Loretta stood beneath washer 6, no drip. Brian came inside with wet shoulders and tar on one sleeve. They listened together. Nothing struck the bucket. "That's a start," Loretta said. He nodded. "I know." 3 months later, the laundromat still stood while construction fencing rose around the old mill blocks. The redesigned walkway curved behind the building. Michael's crooked sidewalk, Dottie called it. A painted sign directed workers and pedestrians toward the front entrance. The facade grant paid for safe wiring in a new open sign, but left the original metal frame and its slight tilt. Business improved. Not dramatically. Enough. Dryer 4 still squealed. The roof no longer leaked. The coffee remained weak because Dottie insisted. Strong coffee made people impatient. A small workforce grant funded Saturday alteration classes and 2 paid apprentice positions. Mrs. Temple handled applications. Janice volunteered once a month. The scholarship student returned during school breaks and taught basic computer skills in the office. Though Dottie continued printing everything. Brian came most Wednesdays after work. Sometimes he repaired shelves. Sometimes he sat at the folding table and reviewed the repayment ledger with Loretta. Their conversations were careful at first. They discussed receipts, weather, his daughter's school, and whether the new sidewalk would flood. They did not discuss forgiveness every week. That helped. Brian's daughter began coming on Saturdays. She was 9 and impatient with pins. She liked buttons better than thread, because buttons stayed where you put them. Loretta showed her how to sort the cookie tin by size. "Why keep the odd ones?" she asked. "Because someday something will be missing exactly one." The girl considered this. That's kind of a lot. It's also useful. One cold afternoon in November, a young woman entered with 2 children and a clear plastic bag of clothes. The older child wore a school uniform shirt with one sleeve torn at the seam. The younger boy had wet shoes and kept lifting one foot as if the floor were cold. The woman placed a handful of quarters on the counter. "Which washer is cheapest?" "Same price," Loretta said. The woman counted again. She had enough for one wash, but not the dryer. Loretta recognized the quick movement of her fingers through receipts and loose change. She had seen it on customers' faces in school lunch lines when account balances ran out. "Use washer 2, Loretta said. "Dryer 2 is included today." The woman looked up. "Why?" "Maintenance special." Dottie, across the room, hid a smile. While the clothes washed, Loretta examined the torn uniform shirt. "I can fix this." "How much?" The question came too fast. Loretta turned the sleeve inside out. The fabric had enough allowance for a strong seam. She chose navy thread from Evelyn's cabinet. "No charge." The words came out rough as if borrowed, then familiar. The woman pressed her lips together. "I can't just take things." Loretta threaded the needle. "Sure you can. Somebody help me keep the lights on. You can bring the shirt back next time it tears." The older child watched every stitch. "Does it always tear there?" "Usually when people pull instead of unbuttoning." The child looked guilty. Loretta smiled. "Everybody does it once." The washer turned. Rain tapped the new roof membrane and went somewhere else. Loretta repaired the sleeve, pressed it flat, and handed the shirt back warm. The woman folded it carefully. "Thank you." Loretta thought of Evelyn's ledger. Care isn't free. Somebody always pays. Decide gladly. This time, Loretta understood the sentence differently. Gladly did not mean without cost. Meant without pretending the cost belonged to someone else. She wrote the repair in a new ledger. November 19, school uniform sleeve, mother short on quarters, no charge. Then she left the ledger in the open drawer. Not hidden. By late afternoon, sunlight filtered through the clean front windows and lay in warm rectangles across the floor. Children's artwork hung above shelves of folded linens. Crayon houses, stick families, crooked hearts, and one picture of a washing machine with orange flames coming out the top. Raymond Sloan saw it during his follow-up inspection and asked whether it was supposed to be dryer 4. Nobody answered fast enough. "I figured," he said. Brian's daughter sat beside Loretta at the folding table, with her tongue pressed into the corner of her mouth. Rain clicked softly against the repaired roof and ran where it was supposed to run. A sewing needle trembled between the girl's fingers. "I can't. You can. It's too little. Most useful things are." The thread missed the eye. Again. Again. On the 4th try it went through, looped back, and tied itself into a tight knot around the needle. The girl groaned. "I ruined it." Loretta examined the knot. "Everybody does that. You too?" "Me too." "Your great-grandmother too," though she would have blamed the thread. The girl smiled. Loretta loosened the knot with the tip of Evelyn's heavy scissors. The black handles rested between them, worn smooth by a woman who had helped hundreds of people, and still managed to miss her own daughter's recital. Loretta no longer needed Evelyn to have been perfect. Only real. Only hers. She cut the frayed end and guided the girl's fingers toward the needle again. Around them, dryers hummed. Someone laughed near the change machine. Brian stood on a step stool, adjusting the crooked open sign and made it tilt farther left. Dottie shouted, "Other way, baby." Though Brian was no baby, and everybody knew it. Melissa brought coffee strong enough to make Raymond cough into his sleeve. The strawberry mug still held pennies. The cookie tin still held odd buttons. The old repair slips were preserved behind glass but the new ledger remained open where anyone could see it. The girl steadied her hand. The thread passed cleanly through the eye. Her face opened like a porch light. "I did it." "You did." She held the needle up proudly. "Who taught you?" Loretta glanced toward the scissors, the warm school shirt waiting for pickup, and the people moving through a place the city had almost measured only in square feet. Then she smiled. My mother did. Together beneath children's drawings and the scent of clean linen, they began the next stitch.